CIU podcast listener or YouTubers. We are here back again. This is CIU podcast again. I'm here with Dr. Williams. I'm here with Professor Kempson. And we are here to talk about continuation of the Constitution. We had an episode discussing a little about the Constitution, foundation, things. And now we want to talk about some of the amendments. We talk about the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. And we will talk a few, not just the whole thing, maybe one, two, three, three, of just a few of them. We just go through it. Chris, go ahead. Let me see. Let me get you started. The freedom of expression, other things that come about with the First Amendment.
Well, again, as we talk about the grand experiment, which is our Constitution, as a living document, some 230 plus years old right now, and still living. Still being changed, still being amended. Mm-hmm. We talked about the Bill of Rights. And as we talked about in the last podcast, the Bill of Rights was not originally in the drafting of the Constitution.
Yep.
Hamilton, as we talked about, felt that the protections in the Constitutions were okay as they were to protect individual rights. And as I mentioned before, James Madison, who was one of the Virginia delegates, later to be the fourth president of the United States, Madison, but at that time, he was a delegate to the convention, to the Constitutional Convention, felt that we needed something different than that. We needed something strong. We needed something to guarantee those individual rights. And as he was known as the father of the Constitution and credited with most of its writing, he basically took his inspiration from previous documents, previous individual rights guaranteed documents, such as the Virginia Declaration of Rights, the Northwestern Ordinance, the English Bill of Rights, and of course, everything that's based off the Magna Carta.
Right.
And again, you take my constitutional law class and you'll learn about the Magna Carta, the original great concept from 1215. So getting back to the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights itself, as you look at it, the Bill of Rights consists of guarantees of civil liberties and checks on state power.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the founding fathers were worried about a government that was over controlling, that was all too powerful, that would basically usurp individuals' rights.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to do that, the founding fathers got together and said, look, we've got to make some compromises. And there were 3/4 compromises back and forth. There were different compromises back and forth, different debates.
Right.
And they were trying to basically figure out a middle ground, if you will, of how we can do this, how we can balance that federalist, that national ideology with that individual or local state ideology of individual rights, still protecting the individual rights. So, as we said, the ratification of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, right?
Yep.
Guarantees certain rights and protections. The First Amendment, everybody knows, right? Prevents the government from interfering with freedoms of speech, peaceable assembly, and the exercise of religion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Second Amendment, that constituted militias or safeguard the liberty that the right to bear arms will not be protected or will be protected. So basically, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms, as most people always, are very familiar with, right?
Everybody says
the
that.
Third Amendment, yeah. The Third Amendment restricts the quartering of soldiers in homes. And again, we'll come back individually here in a minute to that. The Fourth Amendment, which is a big one, protects citizens against unreasonable searches or seizures of private property.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, and Eighth Amendments establish a variety of guarantees relating to civil or legal proceedings and criminal justice itself, and such as the right to trial by jury, protections against self-incrimination and double jeopardy, which is being tried for the same offense. The right to due process itself, due process, and that principle in and of itself could be, a whole lecture and a whole class by itself. What is due process?
Again, after you go through of them, we just go back and discuss one of them, the First Amendment. Then another podcast we can discuss, another amendment.
Right. I mean, we can follow up with each one. So the First Amendment. So you have to remember, all right, you're talking, the 1780, 1789, when these were proposed and debated back and forth, It prevents the government from interfering with the freedoms of speech, assembly, and the exercise of religion. So again, it was crafted to get away from the ruling monarch,
Mhm.
King George at the time, where you could be held in sedition for speaking wrongly against the king, the crown, the government. Where more than three people gathering, they would think that, oh, you're plotting sedition, you're going to overthrow the government, so you can't assemble. And then, of course, the religion. The National Church of England was supposed to be the national religion, and we know the division of between church and state. That
Right.
there's a division there that one is not controlling over the other. And again, the First Amendment is seminal in the protection of the basic individual rights of being able to speak out against the government.
Yep, without
And
being intimidated, putting praising and things like that. And we see, and that is what set our the U.S. Constitution apart from any other country. That ability to speak ill of the government. If you don't like what the government is doing, you can say what you want to say. The press can write about the government. Go ahead, Chris. Let me let you continue.
exactly. And when we talk about nations is very young in its ideology, in its political ideology, in its governance ideology. When you talk about compared to the rest of the world, 200 plus years is young compared to most of the other governments.
Right.
So the ability to speak, and I'm not saying intentionally against the government saying malicious and bad and terrible things, because as like I said, as you learn through constitutional law, you'll learn about what is what we call protected speech. You know, the right that you're guaranteed protects you up until a certain point. You know, as and again, just a thought of Wendell Holmes.
Right.
You know, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. It is his famous quote from the famous case. Okay, of how far can you go in curtailing free speech,
Mhm, mhm.
peaceable assembly, and again, with the issues going on now in our politics and in our society, it just it
The,
calls to home.
the
Right,
challenge.
there's so many
Yep.
very challenging for the court, for the Supreme Court over the next 6 months. They're going to be taking up these, you know, these issues.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it's. I mean, part of it, you write. We had the press that we write an article and have a confidential informer, and then you want to find out who told you. You see that's breach of the confidential immunity and other things. So how far can the press go without being put through in jail because of contempt? Because when the court will hold before a judge and the judge said, you wrote this article and it crossed the line. And we want to know the source of the press. I can't disclose my source. And so these are the kind of dispute and other things that keep coming up. And that way, like you rightfully mentioned, the country is a young country. So some of these things are still being tested every day. We many times we hear a lot of free speech. It's my freedom to speak. And then when somebody speak against you, you say, you can't do that. That's a little too far, you know. Why did you say that? That's not good, you know. And we've been put a label on the person, other things we've been put on. But then we start moving away from the, we say, oh, wow, this freedom of speech, a right to protest, that, you know, a right to gather, which is protesting, right to gather, or right to free press that people write and then law. You may lose your job. There are consequences, other things that happen. Depends how the other person perceive, you know, what he considered to be freedom of expression. So these are some of the challenges we face. But it's a very interesting time to see how the Constitution is being tested. And again, we discussed last night, it come right before the courts, right?
Exactly, exactly. So when we talk about the Bill of Rights, it's basically founded off the principle or the theory of natural rights. So that don't just think about the United States. Don't think about America. Think about the world as a whole, as a people, as a world people, natural human rights.
Mhm.
And then, you know, that interests you have international law, which you can see again, you know, natural law being fundamental and inalienable rights. In
Mhm.
other words, they can't be repealed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And those of you who were let's see, philosophy majors would know Thomas Hobbes and John Locke when it comes to that, you know,
Yeah.
and going all the way back to Greek philosophy and Roman philosophers of Cicero, you know, all the way back to basic human rights. And it's, again, to me, it's one of the greatest documents ever conceived to still be able to be modified, to grow with society as a whole.
Yeah, and then again, it's like we say, it's growing and being challenged. And legal scholars and lawyers out there, we keep paying attention and we keep following the changes and we keep teaching there. So we invite you to come join our class and join our spirited class and see how you learn, how you're citing learning these things after the R. It's not boring subject, it's very, very much animated and to see how these things came about and why it came about and how they impact our life today. So we invite you to come join the
Absolutely.
session. Okay, Professor
We
Kempson.
look forward to seeing you.
Yep. We look forward to seeing you the next semester. Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll go to sign up now. Thank you so much, yeah, you listener. Thank you, and talk to you in our next podcast.